A pathless wilderness, wild, rugged, that was South Dakota. A hardy frontier, far from the paths of civilization.
Why die on Mars when you can live in South Dakota?
Where fortune beckoned with a glittering smile.
I was hauling pigs on the interstate. You were in a red car having a problem with your shirt.
And life hung on the quickness of a trigger finger.
Podcast Palooza.
The Sioux Empire Podcast.
Well, welcome everyone to the Sioux Empire Podcast. I am your host, Robert Mailing, and this is the Sioux Empire Podcast, the quirky but harmless podcast that's all about Sioux Empire news, comedy, music, and culture. Joining me today is someone that, if you follow our podcast and podcasts, is not a stranger at all. This is Dan Bublitz Jr. Hey, Dan, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you today?
I am doing great. So, first off, you're here today. We're going to talk a little bit about your one-man show that you're promoting that you've got a video online of. It was supposed to be a love story, is the name of it, and it's kind of a personal testimonial one-man show.
Absolutely. It's a show about relationships or a relationship, love and loss, and the interesting thing about it is it's not just comedy. It combines, I also write poetry, and so it combines poetry and monologues and stand-up comedy into one show about a particular relationship that went south. Yeah,
it's quite the story. I remember when I was first finding out about it, talking with you, and just like, God damn, that actually happened? So it's, first off, I don't want to spoil anything, but the story is pretty cool. And by cool, I mean tragic. So I'm sitting here like, oh, it's so awesome. You're like, yeah, it was sure awesome the way all those terrible things happened. I will choose my words more carefully here. Your tragedy was great. But no,
right, But it's one of them things, though, that the thing that I like about it most, though, is how, at the time, yes, it was a tragedy, but I was able to turn it into something positive.
Absolutely.
I think more people need to do that with, you need to turn the negatives into positives, find the silver lining, if you will, and of a situation and do something with it,
Absolutely.
And that's what I did with this.
And you mentioned that it's something I think is unique for this region and area is that it's kind of the one-man show format that you'd see a little bit more in like an area that had a more developed like stand-up and, just like local community theater kind of scene in general, not to at all, denigrate the fantastic community theaters that are around here and stuff like that. But this is something I'd more expect to see like on the coasts a little bit, where you like someone has a one-man show and they kind of get into a testimonial thing. And almost all of them in this format, I mean, someone from the Midwest might not be familiar with it, or from like more rural area like me, where it's like somebody gets up there and it's like sometimes there's music, sometimes there's it's a mixed format, and it isn't like a full-on play, but it's a one-man show where you're basically like giving a testimonial about something that happened. And fortunately, even though the story is not fun to have experienced, your background and stand-up helps you like interject a little comedy into it, and hopefully everyone learns and grows along with you as it goes.
Oh, absolutely, and that's kind of, what I hope comes out of it, that, if somebody watches it and, it helps them in their own life, that's great. I mean, at the end of the day, it was really, for me, writing it was a good way. It was a very therapeutic experience, to take it and take this thing that happened to me and write about it and then perform it and get it out there, And sometimes that's, the writing can be very therapeutic. And so for me, it was very therapeutic. But I learned a lot about myself because of this situation. And people that knew me before this relationship ended versus after the relationship ended could tell that I changed. And, I changed I feel like I changed for the better. So, you know.
Absolutely. It's an interesting story. And then another thing that kind of getting to the regionalism a little bit is that it's always interesting, I find, to meet the stand-up comedians who are from this area, because, you know, we have a great comedy scene here in Sioux Falls, and, you know, I'm even seeing it in like Aberdeen, and now with you in Huron is a, you know, like a big boost for it and stuff. But just like South Dakota in general, we're not used to like the idea of like a comedy scene, I don't think, or like you know, we don't have that ecosystem like you'd have on the coasts. So I always find it fascinating, the people who are like out here on the prairie and are like, you know, I want to do stand-up or something, you know, truly creative, eclectic like that. Do you feel like, how do you feel that being from this region has, you know, here's my very roundabout way of getting to the damn question. How do you feel like your background in this region has influenced your work, like doing stand-up and doing this one-man show in your background?
Well, I guess for me, you know, growing up in the Midwest is we're more of a humble people and maybe a little more self-aware, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense, but to me, you know, because of that and because of my upbringing here, I'm more down to earth. I guess that would be a better way to describe it. I'm more down to earth, but I am also very self-aware. Like my upbringing made me self-aware that, you know, I can't be afraid to look at my faults and try to become a better person. And that's stuff that I put into my work, especially this one-man show, you know. It was, you know, the basic of the story was it's about a relationship, you know, like I said, that went south, but it wasn't all one-sided, you know. It takes two to make a good relationship work. So,
oh, absolutely.
And I see, you know, and I point out some of my own faults and you know, so it was a good, like, self-realization that I could improve as a person. And that's something that I, you know, like I said, growing up in the Midwest, something that I got from that, at least my upbringing, my parents, you know, and just the people that were around me, you know, it was, in fact, you know, I'm kind of straggling on about this, but I just had a conversation about this with my girlfriend this morning where I was like, you know, sometimes I'm surprised I grew up the way I did, like, because I didn't have necessarily the greatest upbringing. You know, my parents, they were there, but they weren't there. You know, they were busy working, and so there wasn't a lot of one-on-one necessarily with my parents and stuff. And my upbringing could have very well been a recipe for disaster, to where I grew up to be just a total, you know, crap bag and whatever. And I'm totally not, you know, I'm totally the opposite. And so it's just amazing how, you know, your environment can really affect who you become without you even realizing it.
Absolutely. So what in particular about, because you do stand-up, that's kind of what you're known for in general, what particularly about doing a one-man show that was mixed format, what inspired you to do that particularly?
Well, I honestly hadn't really thought about doing a one-man show. Like, I knew of one-man shows. I know what they are. Like, going back to what you're talking about, how they're more common on the coast, which is true, because a lot of times, and not just comics, but actors will do one-person shows as a way of, you know, they'll write a show and then they'll perform it. They'll rent their own little theater in LA and try to invite people, and it's a way for them to try to showcase their acting talent, if you will, but also do, you know, a testimonial about whatever whatever happened to them or whatever. Well, so for me, I never really thought about that. I was mostly stand-up, and after this event took place, because it was kind of a weird deal. I mean, I have to give some of it away. You know, we had a wedding, and then a few days later, we broke up, and it was a big fiasco on Facebook and in the public, and just all kinds of just crazy stuff happened. And I was at an open mic one night after it happened, and you know, I was talking with another comic, and she was like, she does one-person shows, and she did some fringe festivals in other countries and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, her name is Ariel Conversi, and think she still lives in the San Diego area. But anyway, she suggested that I write a one-person show about this event. She was like, this is a crazy story. It's, you know, as sad as it is, it's pretty interesting. And I was like, maybe. And then I thought about it more, and so I decided to try to start writing it. And it took over 3 years to actually write it. And the funny thing is that the process was weird because I kind of started writing the script for it and had the idea about it, but I realized after a couple of years I had already written it. I just didn't realize it was written because I wrote a lot of poetry after the breakup. You know, I had my stand-up already, and basically I had all these different things where I was writing things that were basically about this relationship, and it was just a matter of taking these and just putting them into one script. You know, taking the poetry that I had written that was inspired by it, taking the comedy that was inspired by it, and putting it into one show.
Cool.
And so I did that.
So you yourself were kind of like approaching the one-man show as like a kind of new thing, but someone that knew one-man shows was like, hey, this is a story for it. Let's see. This was filmed in Watertown, right?
Yeah, yep. At the Goss Opera House.
Very cool.
Before it unfortunately closed down.
Oh, that's sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. Well, I know there's some initiatives to try to save it. They've got some fundraising and stuff going on, and there's some stuff that they're going through to try to get it reopened. So
sure,
it's not done forever. Just kind of in hiatus, I guess, right now.
There you go. Let's see. Dan, where can people learn more about the one-man show and buy a copy of it if they're interested?
Well, it is available. It will be available on Amazon. I'm still doing some post-production stuff before I can get it on Amazon. Amazon has some more, requirements that I wasn't necessarily prepared for. So
sure.
Stuff with subtitles and closed captioning and things like that. So we're still doing some post-production stuff before we can put it on Amazon. But it will be available on Amazon in the near future. But right now it is available for digital download on my website at danbublitz.com. And that's DANBUBLITZ.com. And if you just go to the tab that says Buy My Stuff, it's on my merch page. So you can...
And we'll link to all this.
$5.
Go ahead.
Oh, that's funny. I was just going to say it's only $5. It's a 5-spot.
Nice.
5-spot, and then you get a digital download of the one-man show. And one of the interesting things, at least for me, that I could be wrong, but I haven't seen it done before. I haven't seen a one-person show that combines spoken word with spoken word with comedy, and maybe there's probably one out there, but it's pretty unique because poetry is usually typically known for being sad, and comedy's making people laugh. So it's definitely an adventure of emotions.
Yeah, it's kind of a hybrid thing, which makes it cool, and gives it gives it a unique kind of flavor to it. Let's see. Do you have any acts or performances or anything coming up that people should be aware of?
Well, that depends. When is this going to air?
Today.
Oh, well, if it's airing today, then yes, I have stuff coming up.
Perfect.
I mean, I have stuff coming up, but it was more of is this worth promoting? But yeah, I'll actually be next Friday, which is the 17th. I will be in Garrettson, South Dakota at Oh So Good restaurant, and like I said, it's a comedy and dinner show, and Chef Omar is amazing. Every show that he does, he does a 3-course meal. It's always fantastic. Some of the best tasting food I've ever had. Shows are always really good. Almost every time they sell out. So if you want to go, get a hold of Oh So Good restaurant to get those tickets, because they go fast. And it's not because of the comedy. It's because his cooking is amazing. And then the 24th and 25th, I will be in Sioux Falls at Boss's Comedy Club.
Ooh.
I will be featuring for my friend Will C., who is a comedian based out of Kansas City. He's a military vet and the founder of Veterans of Comedy. He does a lot of fundraising stuff for wounded warriors, and he'll be headlining in Sioux Falls. So he's very funny comic and just a beautiful person. So that'll be a great show.
Awesome. Well, Dan, thank you very much for joining us here on the podcast. We wish you luck with the one-man show. Everyone be sure to check that out. And, check out your events, especially performance coming here in Sioux Falls. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And all the information for all that stuff is on my website as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.